The phone conversation between fantasy veterans Bob Harris and Matt Waldman is a quick and dirty rundown of players, units, or teams from Sunday's games. Feel it or fuck it is our instant verdict on the fantasy value of a player or situation, not the ability, effort, or character of the player. This is just how two old-timers in this industry talk when they got a lot to cover in a little time.
Good morning, Matt Waldman. It's, what is it? It's Monday, July 3rd. Happy July 4th, a day early, sir.
Happy July 4th to you. I'm doing pretty good. You know, we're gonna see how the old dog does with fireworks. But he did pretty good last night with the first round. So we'll see how he does with the full round.
Question: when did we decide that fireworks begin 3 days in advance of the 4th of July? Is this like testing? I'm not sure what's going on. They do it here as well. They did it in Albuquerque. I'm in here being Dallas. They did it in Albuquerque when I was there. I don't think we really need a reason to shoot fireworks.
I don't either, but I think that beer commercials combined with, long weekends off kind of lead to people wanting to light fireworks and get themselves in emergency rooms like early,
I believe if you left the word commercial out of that, it would be more accurate.
That's true. But I don't know. I think they just want to beat the rush to the holiday rush to the emergency room. That's all it is. Like they want to beat Jason Pierre-Paul, JPP to it.
No players need to do anything. We are in the month of July.
Yeah.
It's the quiet time of the NFL. That means
stay quiet, guys.
That means Tyreek Hill's fishing trips become of much greater interest to all of us. We can talk, and we'll get to that at some point. We've kind of hit on it, but we'll see how it plays out. We're getting a little closer to some resolution on Joe Mixon's off-field issues as well. Alvin Kamara's trial is the 31st set to start, so we'll have some resolution on some of these things. But I want to go with some more amorphous issues today.
Good, because I'm tired of Judge Jeudy, and I've never even watched the show.
Feel it or fuck it here. So here's let me set this up. So as we head into the season, Jordan Love about to start for the Green Bay Packers, and the argument here at NFL.com is that Love is actually in a better spot taking over as the starter than when Aaron Rodgers was. The argument was Love's played in more games, thrown more touchdowns in his 3 years, learning the ropes than Rodgers did under Brett Favre. He's seen more game action and started in place of Rodgers, something Rodgers didn't do until he was actually named the starter. Numbers are, it's a narrow band of information, Matt. Are you feeling this argument that Jordan Love is better prepared to take over as the starting quarterback of the Green Bay Packers than when Aaron Rodgers was?
No, not at all. Fuck that. Because I love I understand from the service of like box score and game participation, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to how well a quarterback makes decisions. And Aaron Rodgers entering the NFL was more prepared to take over the Packers' reins than Jordan Love was. So maybe if Jordan Love proves that he's gotten a lot better over a longer period of time than what Aaron Rodgers needed to get better at, maybe that will prove out to be the case. But I'm waiting for, if you're drafted as an NFL caliber quarterback in the first 3 to 4 rounds, it should be expected that you're going to be semi-competent when they put you in the game. But over a course of time, when teams start to get a book on you, are you going to be able to really grow past that to become a top-end starter? And we just don't know. So right now, it's just interesting talk.
Yeah, and worth noting, the 2008 season, Rodgers first as a starter, he threw his career-high 13 interceptions. 13's not very many. I'm going to take the over on that for Love. But I'm going to continue my argument that the Packers know more about this than we do. I'm starting to draft him a little bit, certainly as a third quarterback with some upside, and he's been available there in the best balls I've been drafting in.
Yeah.
And there are some leagues where I'm actually, if I'm waiting real late, I'll go ahead and take a swing on him as my number 2.
Yeah, he's totally what most of the people who are talking about that Love is more prepared to take the reins than Aaron Rodgers. Most of them were the same people who said that, Patrick Mahomes was just a wild child who couldn't who would just be an interception machine with lots of excitement. Well, that's who Jordan Love actually is, at least was coming out of the gate. So we'll see if I'm betting the over-under is 20 interceptions.
It's fair. And by the way, just you mentioned that box score, kind of numbers and things. There are other numbers. I happen to be reading a great article in the 34th edition of the Fantasy Football Pro Forecast.
Get yours soon.
It's available now. It's out on newsstands. Look for it. It's everywhere. Also available at footballdiehards.com. Use the promo code diehards for 15% discount. But there's an article by a guy named Matt Waldman, and the discussion is about Anthony Richardson and his accuracy and the difference between box score and charted accuracy. And something to pay attention to, people, and maybe that's the case for one Jordan Love as well. Justin Herbert, sources tell me, those sources being my eye, he's really good. I'm no draft nick or anything, but he has been playing really well. Great rookie season, set records for completions and touchdowns, passing yards per game, offensive rookie of the year, all those things. He took a step forward in year 2. Last year, not so great. There were a lot of injuries. There were some issues. Joe Lombardi's been let go, and Kellen Moore takes over. And I think what's interesting is Kellen Moore, in the 2 years Moore had a healthy Dak Prescott, his offense led the NFL in total yards. Cowboys finished top 6 in scoring in each season where Prescott played at least 6 games. Last year, I think they ranked, third in touchdowns scored. I mean, they run the ball really well. And Moore was talking this week about the height advantage his receiving core gives him. I don't think they got a guy under 6 feet there, right? I mean, between Quentin Johnston, the newcomer, and Mike Williams got a couple 6'4" guys. Keenan Allen 6'2". Donald Parham Jr. making some waves in camp, is 6'8" at tight end. Nobody under 6 feet tall. Said we're going to be throwing in a different jet stream, as the way he put it. Are we feeling the Chargers offense being better than the Cowboys has been?
I can see a path to that success, but I'm not going to put it totally on what his explanation is, because Quentin Johnston is a good example of a tall wide receiver who, because of the way he uses his hands to trap the football in situations on contested throws that you would say the jet stream is higher, he's actually a tall receiver who plays like he's a 5'7" receiver with no vertical. So he's got some work to do. The rest of them I agree with. So when I look at it from this perspective, the other thing too is that Kellen Moore, when we watched him at Boise State as a quarterback, he's a perfect example of that limited arm talent who was a highly technical player. Drop back, with all the drops and all the play action. I have to think there's a little bit of bias with Kellen Moore, that when he was working with Dak Prescott, who was not, the quintessential technician, but just got the job done, and a lot of it was due to athletic ability that Kellen Moore could never even come within 50 miles of. I think he looks at Justin Herbert and sees the athletic ability that Herbert has, but also admires that technical skill of the pocket quarterback who can execute on paper exactly how Moore would expect it to be seen and how he was raised to see it. So I think that seeing that with Herbert probably makes him feel a little better when you're from an offensive coordinator's point of view of like sticking to the play and knowing that you don't have to lean so much all the time on your athletic ability in the way that maybe Dak Prescott sometimes had to veer away from it in Dallas. So, from that perspective, I love what they're saying, but let's remember something. Keenan Allen gets hurt almost every year, and he's old. Quentin Johnston, we just talked about him. Mike Williams, great, that's fine. They lost DeAndre Carter, who's a pretty solid veteran. Palmer, still, good, but can he be 1,300 yards good, or is he always going to be an 800, 900 yard player at best? And so I like it. I think they can be competitive with the Cowboys, but I'm not ready to say better.
Fair enough. I think there's a lot to talk to Joe Reedy from the Associated Press, who covers that team on a daily basis this past weekend. And he thinks we should expect a little stronger rushing attack, which he thinks will take some pressure off and maybe a little more, more deep balls. And I think that was a big issue with Lombardi, was the average depth of target was not as great as they would have liked it to have been last year. I wonder if some of that wasn't due to the fact of what you said, the injuries at wide receiver. By the way, Keenan Allen, the slanderous talk you just gave on him, remember, one of his injuries was like, a lacerated kidney or something. I mean, he's had some bad luck with injuries. Also, when he returned from the hamstring last year, which was, okay, he had a hamstring issue. He was a wide receiver 6 from week 13 on in fantasy.
Hey, I love Keenan Allen. I just don't love that I can't rely on him.
I'm going to just take issue with that, young man. Fuck that. All right, we'll move on. The Broncos, they had
That's
Courtland
good
Sutton
points.
study Michael Thomas's 2019 film this offseason. I think we should all do that. It was joyous. And so, there's some hope there. But beyond that, NFL Network's James Palmer said multiple people in the Broncos building believe Tim Patrick is, quote, the best football player in the wide receiver room. Are you feeling the cheaper assets in Denver over Jerry Jeudy? And just for a little context, Jeudy currently on Underdog Best Ball is going off as wide receiver 21 at the associated cost. Courtland Sutton, wide receiver 48, 93 ADP. Tim Patrick, the free square, wide receiver 83 at 196 ADP.
Yeah, I'm feeling Tim Patrick and Marvin Mims, actually, as the cheaper options there, just because Judy's been a relative disappointment. He had a good year last year. I'll say that. He did. But I think when people said he's like, the next Antonio Brown, I thought maybe at best he could become a Reggie Wayne type of presence at best. And I don't think he's there yet. And so Sutton, it's good that he's studying Michael Thomas's tape. But at the end of the day, it's still about him and the catch point and some things that he's sloppy with. I think one of Sutton or Jeudy will be gone by midseason, and I think it's probably going to be Sutton. And Patrick, feel good about him. I mean, if he's their best player, that tells you what you need to know about the inexperience of Marvin Mims, KJ Hamler, Sutton, and Jeudy, because Patrick can play a little bit outside, but he's at his best inside working against safeties. And so he's a reliable pass catcher. He's where the receiver where the quarterback needs him to be, but I don't think he's necessarily a one-on-one 3rd and 15. They know what's coming and they can't stop him. He's not that player. So that, to me, that statement says Broncos receiving core has some growth to do.
Yeah, there's a reason they spent some time fielding calls for both Jeudy and Sutton, and apparently didn't get the price they were after. I do think, I have some shares of Patrick. I think Sutton's price is fairly appealing if he went anywhere. But look, we've seen super high-end receivers suddenly just fall off the cliff. We usually associate that with running backs. I think Kenny Golladay and Allen Robinson would like a word with us on that. It's sometimes receivers just hit that cliff as well. So We'll see. Maybe Sutton's there too. Much of this will hinge on Russell Wilson also returning to some level of productivity. It is encouraging that Sean Payton is done with the nonsense. Russell Wilson no longer has an offense. His people no longer have any sway inside the building, and so we'll see how that plays out. Frank Reich in Carolina mentioned Jonathan Mingo when asked to name his spring standouts. I think yesterday, Terrace Marshall Jr. also getting some positive reviews. The Athletic, Joseph Person saying Raheem Blackshear could emerge as an outlet for Bryce Young out of the backfield. Oh, so much greatness in Carolina, yet somehow I find myself only really interested in Miles Sanders and maybe moderately interested in very late round flyers on Adam Thielen as a non-zero player, and maybe DJ Chark in best ball. What's your feeling on any of Carolina's non-Miles Sanders assets? Are you in on any of this, or fuck them all?
Well, I'm going to continue to be in on monitoring Jonathan Mingo because he could become a standout player for them. Terrace Marshall is still a talented guy, but how much of this, the tough part about this is how do you believe which is the spring, let's talk up the guy, make him feel confident and keep working hard type of thing, and how much of this is legitimate, and how much of this is the beat reporter who's just asking other people what they thought of what's going on and then writing it as if like this is a standout.
May I answer? Let me answer that. Combined 100%.
Yes, combined one. There we go. So I'll keep an eye on Mingo. Raheem Blackshear has always been a great screen player and a dump off option. So that makes sense that he could be kind of the trying to remember the name of the kid who I liked out of Southern Miss, who used to play with Jalen Richard. He could be a Jalen Richard type of player. I think there's potential for that if they need that. but I don't think it changes my view of Miles Sanders an awful lot. I know you're a little higher on him than I am, but I still think Sanders is in for a solid season. If anything, Raheem Blackshear could emerge as an outlet for Bryce Young out of the backfield, and it could change my view of Chuba Hubbard, which wasn't I didn't hold in very high esteem anyway. So, yeah, there we go.
I would like to remind everybody, nobody likes Miles Sanders as much as Fantasy Nation loves Miles Sanders. And it harkens back to the rookie season in Philadelphia where he was the predominant playmaker. They had a number of injuries at wideout. He ended up catching 50 passes and was their biggest playmaker and showed a lot of downfield speed and ability. And we've all been waiting to see more of that. And we'd like to think we're going to see some of it in Carolina. I'm hopeful, but not entirely sure. But I am drafting with the higher end of his current range. Getting him as a running back 2 seems reasonable. And I don't know that I expect a whole lot of running back 1 weeks, but I suppose it's possible. Same goes in Houston. Texans running back coach Danny Barrett said this week, Dameon Pierce has improved his pass blocking this offseason. He also spent a lot of time watching film of one Christian McCaffrey in an effort to understand what's possible in this offense. And I love the positive buzz. Also, I'm old enough to remember when Devin Singletary signed with this team because he did it just a couple months ago. And he's there. I know our friend Gary Davenport over at Bleacher Report has big concerns. He thinks Singletary is not just a guy. He's a little more than just a guy. And this is going to be a limiting factor for Dameon Pierce. Are you feeling that or fuck it?
I'm not feeling that. Lots of respect to Gary and the work that he does, and I certainly think Devin Singletary, if called upon, can be a low end running back 2 for a team. But if they're using if they have to use Devin Singletary as the primary option because Pierce gets hurt, I guarantee you that they will be looking for a speedy guy to get the edges in that 49ers offense. Or style of offense that they want to run, because Singletary doesn't have that speed at all. Can't say that Dameon Pierce does either, but he has a little more burst than Singletary does. So if you ask me, I think it goes down like this. Dameon Pierce is a mid to low end running back 2 if Singletary has the value that people fear, or at least somewhat fear. And then if there's no fear at all, then Dameon Pierce is a high-end running back 2. So as long as you keep the expectations at running back 2, I think you're going to be fine with him.
Yeah, Singletary currently 154 ADP on Underdog Best Balls. He's running back 49. Pierce is going a little bit higher than I would expect. And some of the names that are going after him, I'm maybe slightly more interested in. He is running back 21 right now with a 67 ADP. Some of the names going after him that I would prefer: Cam Akers, Dalvin Cook. I would probably still prefer to take a chance on Rashad White, James Conner. And there are many others going after him, but those were some that I would be super interested in taking ahead of Mr. Dameon.
The first 2, I'm with you, and then James Conner possibly. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the clear path. Until somebody lands there, I don't see anyone usurping that workload. It's the question there is, how good is that offense going to be? Also, I have that same question in Houston. So there's that. Not feeling that offense just yet. Still, here I am out there going, Nico Collins in round 12? Okay. Yep. Can't resist. It's irresistible.
Our buddy Dwayne McFarland agrees.
Okay, and I like it when Dwayne McFarland agrees because it makes me feel way smarter than I probably am. Something that makes me feel less smart than I probably am, I've been investing some shares, free squares, right? Granted, in Tyquan Thornton. I think the fantasy community, Matt, has kind of decided at some point that he had moved ahead of Devontae Parker. Devontae Parker's new paycheck suggests we've been a little hasty in that. Parker gets a 3-year, $33 million deal. Sounds like it's heavily incentive-based, or at least half of it is in incentives. So there's that. But also talked to Nicole Yang from the Boston Globe a couple weeks ago, and she mentioned that Tyquan Thornton has been notably absent from workouts, a soft tissue injury that seems to be an ongoing issue with him at times. So also an ongoing issue with Parker. But I guess the question is, do you feel like we've written Devontae Parker off too soon?
No.
Thank you.
Because let's just put it this way. If there's a team that, if I were 25 years younger and in the need to, make a living, like trying to establish a way to make a living, and I had some NFL connections at that time, I would probably try to take a job for free to be a wide receiver consultant for Bill Belichick when it comes to the draft, because other than slot receivers, they are awful at drafting outside receivers, and Bill Belichick has admitted as much. And I think that they really have a bad picker when it comes to choosing receivers who are not slot players or players who could convert to the slot. And so when you look at Parker, I mean, the athletic ability is absolutely there. The ability to get it done week to week has not. They could have had better up and coming players that they could have taken a chance on than Parker. I just think this is just another chapter in the book that says the nightmare on whatever the address is for the Patriots facility, because this is their wide receiver core is just filled with players who just don't make that next step and are just limited in some fashion.
Yeah, I think those free squares that I've spent on Tyquan Thornton, I probably paid the appropriate price for them.
Yeah.
I'll put it like that. So speaking of unproven young products at wide receiver, this Mike Evans kid coming off his 9th straight 1,000-yard season. I think Jerry Rice has 11 in a row. Evans feels like he can get there. We'll see who the quarterback is. Right now, I talked to Scott Reynolds from Pewter Report this past weekend. He said he's really high on Baker Mayfield, by the way. Not, like high on Baker Mayfield being a super high-end quarterback, but high on Baker Mayfield having been humbled and realizing the opportunity he is getting in this point. Matt, what are you going to do? You're going to poke me in the eye with the straw?
He needs to put the straw down so he doesn't get high anymore. Okay.
Anyway,
yeah.
The point being, he feels like Mike Evans is more than capable of hitting this 1,000 yards. I believe the Buccaneers will put every effort into getting him there. Are you feeling Mike Evans is going dirt cheap? I mean, he and Chris Godwin are both going cheap. You're paying more for Godwin in best balls right now, and you probably will at your regular draft. But Evans is hitting that point where I'm starting to feel like he's a value. Matt, are you with me on this, or fuck that?
No, I'm with you on it, in fact, because I know that's a surprise because you're thinking, all I'm thinking is Baker Mayfield sucks. So that's what it is. But of the two, as much as I think Chris Godwin is the better all-around receiver, like he's the guy that I think is better all-around than Mike Evans, though Evans and what he does in his role has a higher fantasy ceiling. Even with Baker Mayfield, what Baker Mayfield does best is throw either deeper targets with air under the ball or a lot of these intermediate routes that are against safeties in the middle of the field or to the boundary, and the receiver who's going to get most of those will be Mike Evans. They'll match him up in the slot. They'll try and pair him against the corners where he can work those, use his height to win on sail routes, corner routes, things like that. So where Baker Mayfield struggles are the Odell Beckham routes in the middle of the field, against one-on-one coverage, tight coverage, where he has to throw the ball on time and with pinpoint accuracy, which he's never really been able to do at the level he should have, that prompted Odell Beckham's dad to send videos to the Cleveland Browns facility, or to the media. And I think that, if Chris Godwin has a father who's like that, we're going to see a lot of videos to the facility. But Mike Evans won't struggle as much in that regard. So I think he has a shot to gain 1,000 yards. If he doesn't, I'll just put it this way, Baker Mayfield will be his favorite person to hate on. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, it was 1,124 yards last year. Touchdowns were the issue, right? He dropped to 6. Even with Tom Brady, but the offense fell off, so they were 21st in average yards per drive.
Yeah.
Offensive line was bad. I don't know that it'll be a ton better this year, but slightly better maybe. They were 26 in average points per drive, and Evans only saw the 10 end zone targets. That's the red zone targets. That's the fewest of his career. So there's reason to believe. And also on Godwin, just a quick note there, Matt. The talk this offseason that we'll see him more on the outside. That maybe his time is. They feel like they're really banging him up in the slot, and that he's more than capable of playing on the outside. I see you nodding in agreement. Do expound, please.
Yeah, and I think that's. He's an excellent flanker who can win contested catches, terrific route runner all around. It's just that with Tom Brady, Tom Brady really wanted to take advantage of the diagnostic skills that Tom Brady has pre and early post snap, to work with a top slot receiver like Godwin. So Godwin was a great weapon for them, especially when their offensive line was limited. And let's remember this: if the offensive line isn't that much better, I'd rather take a 50-year-old Tom Brady than a peak Baker Mayfield in terms of pocket presence. Mayfield may be able to run around more, but he's going to run himself into getting hammered. Because he doesn't really understand how to manage a pocket like Brady, who was one of the best ever. So, Godwin was a benefit of that, but I think they look at what Mayfield can and can't do and go, if we keep Godwin on the inside, he's going to get killed.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what the argument has been. So I have one here for you. I want you to spend 15 seconds on this for me and the 7 other people that might have drafted him in deep in dynasty drafts or accidentally taken him in a Scott Fishbowl mock draft the other night. I blame me. Eric Bieniemy says, 5th round, Commanders' 5th round pick, running back Chris Rodriguez has to prove himself on special teams. Is this like just another way of saying this guy doesn't have a chance?
Yes, correct. He is an aspiring Spencer Ware, and he's a good flight of stairs away from that. I like Chris Rodriguez at Kentucky, but the hype on him was kind of nutty. He is a powerful player with not a lot of burst, who can do everything reasonably well enough to make an NFL team, but never really be. I don't even know if he's as good as Benny Snell, who was before him. And we've seen Benny Snell, and other than that one game where everyone went nuts, where he played well against the Giants and thought he was the future to James Conner. James Conner's still a starter in this league. Benny Snell is yet to be one.
Thank you for your honesty, and also fuck you for being so honest to crush my feelings. I believe this was a special effort on my behalf. Another guy that we were really all high on last year that maybe fell a little short, Treylon Burks. The reporting this offseason has been glowing. The latest Teron Davenport at ESPN suggesting there's a different swagger with Burks. Reported the facility with a noticeably leaner build. He's playing at a different speed from his rookie season. Ryan Tannehill showing faith to throw Burks' way, regardless of whether he is wide open or in tight coverage, according to Davenport. I've also seen other reports, Matt, suggesting that there was a point where he couldn't catch a flight or get a rental car to get back for OTAs. So he hired a Cessna pilot and got flown to Tennessee so he wouldn't miss any workouts. Let's say he has, rounded a corner. There were some health issues last year. Talent-wise, is this guy capable in this offense of delivering high-end fantasy production?
Absolutely, he is, and I think that he should be a pick that is worth consideration where his value's at. He's figured out what he needs to look like, in terms of his build to be able to play NFL football, which is usually what guys have to figure out between year 1 and year 2. Alec Pierce with the Colts also came in much heavier and more muscled because he needed to get the NFL body. Burks had to go the opposite direction, and I think that the faith to target him the way that they're doing is a good thing. And also, Burks knows that Mike Vrabel doesn't take anything off of anybody for dumb scheduling quirks. So if he hired a Cessna, he knew he was scared shitless about not making a good impression early on. So yeah, I like that Burks has gotten the memo, and I think he's going to be a good player.
Yeah, that's why I brought up that part of the story. I think it's, these motivations, the self-motivations are important. Treylon Burks going off as wide receiver 36, so you're getting the tail end of the wide receiver 3 range, and the same range as guys like Mike Evans. Tyler Lockett's still criminally underrated going off as wide receiver 34. People, pay attention to the numbers the last 5 years on Tyler Lockett, please.
Yeah.
But shortly after that, like Jordan Addison, I think is maybe a little overvalued at 37. Kadarius Toney at 38. Jahan Dotson, another second-year player that I think is going to be on the rise, as well as George Pickens, all in that same range. So if you like these second-year guys that maybe didn't do everything you expected year 1, they're all in pretty good price range to maybe deliver this year. Semi-related note, Kyle Phillips. He's bulked up. He was little. He was 180 pounds last year. He's up to maybe 190, 195, but had a super impressive week 1 last year. Then the injury bugs caught him. He seems to be the different piece there. I mean, we're all in on Chigakonkwo. We're starting to come around on Treylon Burks. Is there enough bandwidth in this passing attack to support another receiving asset there? And might that receiving asset be Kyle Phillips?
There could be, and I think he's worth the free square just in case one of the 2 players that you just mentioned ahead of Phillips on the pecking order get hurt. And then Phillips could really have a big season. But I think he's a fine bye week option you can take off the waiver wire, or you take late in drafts and just see how that offense progresses, because Ryan Tannehill is certainly capable enough as long as the offensive line is good. I think Derrick Henry's playing well enough. So, yeah, I'm bullish on the idea of Kyle Phillips as a free square guy, yeah.
By the way, in Tennessee, Nicholas Petit-Frere, the offensive tackle, received a 6-game suspension. In Jacksonville, Cam Robinson, we kind of knew this was coming, got his 4-game suspension for violating the league's performance-enhancing dope policy. Any downgrades for Derrick Henry or Travis Etienne related to these issues?
Well, I think while they do use Henry on the outside runs, I think that center guard is a little bit more important combination for Henry than it is with Etienne, who's going to be running outside a little bit more, where the tackle is going to be important. And they don't, I'm not sure the tight end room is a great blocking room in Jacksonville overall. So it might impact Etienne a little more than Henry, but I think what's going to impact Etienne a little bit more than the offensive line is likely that they want to have him share time with the running backs that are in that room, namely Tank Bigsby, probably at least between the tackles, and a little bit more Dearness Johnson in the passing game. So, if anything, I would say I wouldn't downgrade Henry, but this might be another layer to keep the downgrade on Etienne.
Right, and I totally agree with all that. Feel that, Matt Waldman. You're acknowledging all the things I already believe. It makes me feel very good about myself. So that's all I'm here for is acknowledgement. Okay, so I want to, in terms of acknowledgement, I think some of these pieces that I've been using for this story came from an ESPN article, which was surprise offseason standouts. So when they're not laying people off, ESPN is big on, kind of hyping up some things and getting their beat writers to provide us a little juice that they know it's a little bait, and we're taking the bait. And some of that bait came in the form of this, Matt Waldman. Puka Nacua, 5th-round draft pick from BYU, says Dan Greenspan of ESPN, earns steady praise from head coach Sean McVay, quarterback Matthew Stafford, and fellow wideout Cooper Kupp. Seems to have picked up the offense quickly, has a knack for getting open, which they believe bodes well for him, or at least Dan Greenspan does, carving out a receiving role in a group that lacks a lot of certainty behind Kupp. I mean, that's kind of hypey, but it's also kind of based in fact. I mean, there's not a lot there. And I think also worth remembering is during his time at BYU, Puka was not just a productive wideout, also used in the run game. He had 357 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns, according to my friend Adam Pfeiffer at Fade the Noise. And it's kind of similar. The Rams used Robert Woods in that rushing role. He had 20 carries a year from 2018 to 2020. Are we sleeping on Puka Nacua?
Yes, I think we are, and I think that he's a player I've certainly been touting a little bit more post-draft in the rookie scouting portfolio service because of his draft landing spot. Because when you look at it, Tutu Atwell, again, he hasn't gained any more weight, so he's still the type of guy that a stiff breeze might blow him out of the stadium. And then, he's a good gadget player or deep threat on certain types of passes, but he's not a matchup threat against one-on-one. So that's kind of an issue. Van Jefferson, people loved his route running, but his hands at the catch point, he's not a one-on-one route winner beyond maybe 10, 15 yards and downfield. So he's not really a high, he's at best a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. That's what he's going to be during his career. They lost Allen Robinson, which wasn't a huge loss for them in terms of what he actually did, but what the expectation was. Nacua, to me, when you say, do you feel he's maybe a Robert Woods type of player in this offense because he can run? I think Robert Woods is a very good, that's obviously the role that they play in the Rams. I would say that he's not quite Robert Woods as a route runner, but the flavor of the Woods type role that he does fit well is, imagine if Golden Tate were in the Rams offense. And if you think about Golden Tate with the Detroit Lions, he was a guy who could play inside, outside, run out of the backfield, great runner after the catch. Nakua's more Golden Tate than Robert Woods, which means maybe a little less reliable as a route runner. But yeah, you should be feeling him.
All right, I like that one. So another one of those pieces on ESPN, this one by Nick Wagner, who covers the 49ers, the extent to which Brandon Ayuk seems ready to elevate his game. Might catch some people off guard, Matt Waldman, but there's a good argument to be made, according to Wagner, that he was consistently the best player on the field during OTAs and minicamp. His performance left fellow wideout Deebo Samuel marveling. You can't cover that boy in a phone booth. And quarterback, one of his defense teammates, Commodore Lenore, declaring that Ayuk will be a top 5 receiver in the NFL in 2023. That seems slightly hyperbolic to me, but let's frame it like this. Deebo Samuel currently going off in the 3rd round of underdog best balls as wide receiver 17. Brandon Ayuk going off in the 5th round, 2 rounds later. Is it possible? Are you feeling Brandon Ayuk outproducing Deebo Samuel this year?
Yeah, I'm feeling that possibility in a big way, because when you think about, overall with this 49ers offense, it is very much a timing passing game. And Deebo Samuel isn't a great timing guy on that level. I actually have projected Deebo Samuel to earn about 3 more targets than Ayuk, but catch 7 fewer for about 2 less yards per catch. Like, I have Samuel at 826 yards and 3 touchdowns as a receiver, and then another 3 rushing touchdowns with 300 yards rushing. So maybe he just beats out Ayuk in the yardage department overall. But I have Ayuk at 1,065 yards on 80 catches and 6 touchdowns. So I think they're very close to even. And if you're going to go with PPR being the slight edge, maybe it's Ayuk. But with combined yardage, Samuel maybe by a hair. So I'm feeling the idea that Ayuk is underrated.
Yeah, wide receiver 28 for Brandon Ayuk. And just to flesh that out a little bit, again, from Adam Pfeiffer from FTN Fantasy, some numbers here. Despite ranking 82nd in yards per target, Samuel only caught 61% of his targets. His 2.5 yards before the catch per reception were the fewest at his position. He failed to reach 65 receiving yards in all but 3 contests. And also, the arrival of Christian McCaffrey was a big factor in the 7 games he played alongside McCaffrey. Samuel averaged 6.7 targets, 4.1 catches, 41 yards per game. That's 11.3 PPR points per week. In the weeks before McCaffrey, he averaged 8 targets, 4.5 receptions, 57 targets, up over 15 points per game. So a 4-point PPR change. Also, one last note. Go ahead and look it up. Which Samuel scored more in PPR last year, Matt? Deebo or Curtis?
Ooh, Curtis.
He did.
Yes.
So it's just, we're still drafting that Deebo to be that ball carrying, that, that
yeah, and that's over.
Producer. And it seems like that is over indeed. All right. So let's finish it off with a fun one here. Trent Sherfield, we were told by ESPN, got increased opportunities at the Z receiver for quarterback Josh Allen, with Stephon Diggs not present for most of OTAs. He made a big impression in that time, with Allen saying of Sherfield during OTAs, and I quote, "I've loved what I've seen from Trent so far. The dude works extremely hard. One of the hardest working guys on the team. Doesn't complain about anything." Matt, are you feeling vague passive-aggressive comments on teammates, or fuck that?
Listen, 20-year-olds will be 20-year-olds. So, I'm sure Terry Bradshaw and people back in the 70s were doing the same shit, and I know Bradshaw was doing it in his 30s and 40s, so some people just never learned. But, just kind of like what I just did. But at least I was direct about saying that it was him, But I think that I don't really care. I don't, at the end of the day, Stephon Diggs is either going to be in town and being the top receiver on the team, or he's not. And it's probably not going to be Trent Sherfield. It's probably going to be, it's either going to be DeAndre Hopkins as the replacement, or it's going to be Khalil Shakir, or a combination of Shakir and Dalton Kincaid with a little bit more Trent Sherfield in the mix, depending on what Gabriel Davis can do. So I'd
like to see everybody working hard, but if we're being honest here, Trent Sherfield probably needs to work a little harder at this point in his career than one Stephon Diggs, who might have demonstrated some ongoing abilities.
And Josh Allen, listen, is he frustrated with Diggs yelling at him? Probably. We don't know what Diggs said, but
I'll go ahead and say this is 50-50. Somebody asked him about Trent Sherfield, and he said something nice about Trent Sherfield. And if Stephon Diggs was even in his mind, in the back of his mind, and that was the slightest of Diggs, no pun intended, It wouldn't be totally surprising, but also I would be pretty dismissive of it as well.
Yeah.
I do think that's the interesting part of the story. There does seem to have been a falling out to some degree. Those guys, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, seem like the best of friends. There were points where they seemed like inseparable buddies, right? And so, so hopefully they can regain that vibe. And maybe it doesn't matter at all once they get on the field. Everything will happen as it does, but. Hopefully all that comes together, much like you and I come together. It was fantastic, phenomenal. I feel this, Matt. I feel it. And so we'll be back maybe next week.
Yeah, maybe next week.
I've got some things. I got some off-field issues going on that I'll have to deal with. So
we're doing the scramble drill. I'll float in space and then if you're ready to throw, then I'll be there.
I think I'll be ready to throw, but I don't know for sure. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Again, go to mattwaldman.com. Check out all the RSP stuff. The post-draft RSP is out there, and there's tons of good content
magazines.
for you.
Get your magazines. Yes.
So
at your
Matt Waldman's in there outlet as well.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, all the bookstores, all the grocery stores, all the drugstores. All the names and the airports too.
Yeah, I mean, wherever you're driving, when you're going to be driving, you need to stop off and get them. You got to stop off somewhere and get them while the kids are running around, and then when you need to retire a little bit from like the family stuff, and you need a little bit of reading time.
When your flight is delayed, I'm told that's quite possible. Go to that Hudson bookstore and you'll find your copy there as well.
Yeah, perfect.
Everybody. Love you, Matt. Goodbye.
Love you.